Chapter 21 of the Talisman. This is the LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Lizzie Driver. The Talisman by Sir Walter Scott. Chapter 21. And withered Murder, alarmed by his sentinel the wolf, whose howl his watch, thus with his stealthy pace, with Tarquin's ravishing strides, towards his design moves like a ghost. Macbeth. For the space of a quarter of an hour or longer after the incident related, all remained perfectly quiet in the front of the royal habitation. The king read and mused in the entrance of his pavilion. Behind, and with his back turned to the same entrance, the Nubian slave still burnished the ample pavese. In front of all, at 100 paces distant, the yeomen of the guard stood, sat, or lay extended on the grass, attentive to their own sports, but pursuing them in silence, while, on the esplanade betwixt them and the front of the tent, lay, scarcely to be distinguished from a bundle of rags, the senseless form of the marabout. But the Nubian had the advantage of a mirror from the brilliant reflection which the surface of the highly polished shield now afforded, by means of which he beheld, to his alarm and surprise, that the marabout raised his head gently from the ground, so as to survey all around him, moving with a well-adjusted precaution which seemed entirely inconsistent with a state of ebriety. He crouched his head instantly, as if satisfied he was unobserved, and began, with the slightest possible appearance of voluntary effort, to drag himself, as if by chance, ever nearer and nearer to the king, but stopping and remaining fixed at intervals, like the spider, which, moving towards her object, collapses into apparent lifelessness when she thinks she is the subject of observation. This species of movement appeared suspicious to the Ethiopian, who, on his part, prepared himself, as quietly as possible, to interfere, the instant that interference should seem to be necessary. The marabout, meanwhile, glided on gradually and imperceptibly, serpent-like, or rather snail-like, till he was about 10 yards distant from Richard's person, when, starting on his feet, he sprung forward with the bound of a tiger, stood at the king's back in less than an instant, and brandished aloft the carnager or poignard which he had hidden in his sleeve. Not the presence of his whole army could have saved their heroic monarch, but the motions of the Nubian had been as well calculated as those of the enthusiast, and ere the latter could strike, the former caught his uplifted arm, turning his fanatical wrath upon what thus unexpectedly interposed betwixt him and his object. The Charegite, for such was the seeming marabout, dealt the Nubian a blow with the dagger, which, however, only grazed his arm, while the far superior strength of the Ethiopian easily dashed him to the ground. Aware of what had passed, Richard had now arisen, and with little more of surprise, anger, or interest of any kind in his countenance than an ordinary man would show in bruising off and crushing an intrusive wasp, caught up the stool on which he had been sitting, and exclaiming only, "Ha, dog!" dashed almost to pieces the skull of the assassin, who uttered twice, once in a loud and once in a broken tone, the words, "Allah Akbar!" God is victorious, and expired at the king's feet. "Ye are careful warders," said Richard to his archers, in a tone of scornful reproach, as, aroused by the bustle of what had passed, in terror and tumult they now rushed into his tent. "Watchful sentinels ye are, to leave me to do such hangman's work with my own hand. Be silent, all of you, and cease your senseless clamour. Saw ye never a dead Turk before? Here, cast that carrion out of the camp, strike the head from the trunk, and stick it on a lance, taking care to turn the face to Mecca, that he may the easier tell the foul impostor on whose inspiration he came hither, how he has sped on his errand. For thee, my swart and silent friend," he added, turning to the Ethiopian, "but how's this? Thou art wounded, and with a poisoned weapon, I'll warrant me, for by force of stab so weak an animal as that could scarce hope to do more than raise the lion's hide. Suck the poison from his wound, one of you. The venom is harmless on the lips, though fatal when it mingles with the blood." The yeomen looked on each other confusedly and with hesitation, the apprehension of so strange a danger prevailing with those who feared no other. "How now, sirrahs?" continued the king. "Are you dainty-lipped, or do you fear death, that you dally thus?" "Not the death of a man," said Long Allen, to whom the king looked as he spoke, "but methinks I would not die like a poisoned rat for the sake of a black chattel there, that is bought and sold in a market like a Maltimus ox." "His Grace speaks to men of sucking poison," muttered another yeoman, as if he said, "Go to, swallow a gooseberry." "Nay," said Richard, "I never bade man do that which I would not do myself." And, without further ceremony, and in spite of the general expostulations of those around, and the respectful opposition of the Nubian himself, the King of England applied his lips to the wound of the black slave, treating with ridicule all remonstrances and overpowering all resistance. He had no sooner intermitted his singular occupation than the Nubian started from him, and, casting a scarf over his arm, intimated by gestures, as firm in purpose as they were respectful in manner, his determination not to permit the monarch to renew so degrading an employment. Long Allen also interposed, saying that, if it were necessary to prevent the king engaging again in a treatment of this kind, his own lips, tongue, and teeth were at the service of the negro, as he called the European, and that he would eat him up bodily, rather than King Richard's mouth should again approach him. Neville, who entered with other officers, added his remonstrances. "Nay, nay, make not a needless halloo about a hart that the hounds have lost, or a danger when it is over," said the king. "The wound will be a trifle, for the blood is scarce drawn. An angry cat had dealt a deeper scratch. And for me, I have but to take a drachm of Ovitan by way of precaution, though it is needless." Thus spoke Richard, a little ashamed, perhaps, of his own condescension, though sanctioned both by humanity and gratitude. But when Neville continued to make remonstrances on the peril to his royal person, the king imposed silence on him. "Peace, I prithee, make no more of it. I did it but to show these ignorant, prejudiced knaves how they might help each other when these cowardly caitiffs come against us with saber-canes and poisoned shafts. But," he added, "take thee this Nubian to thy quarters, Neville. I have changed my mind touching him. Let him be well cared for. But hark in thine ear, see that he escapes thee not. There is more in him than seems. Let him have all liberty, so that he leave not the camp. And you, ye beef-devouring, wine-swilling English mastiffs, get ye to your guard again, and be sure you keep it more warily. Think not you are now in your own land of fair play, where men speak before they strike and shake hands ere they cut throats. Danger in our land walks openly and with his blade drawn, and defies the foe whom he means to assault. But here he challenges you with a silk glove instead of a steel gauntlet, cuts your throat with the feather of a turtle dove, stabs you with the tongue of a priest's brooch, or throttles you with the lace of my lady's bodice. Go to. Keep your eyes open and your mouths shut. Drink less and look sharper about you, or I will place your huge stomachs on such short allowance as would pinch the stomach of a patient Scottish man." The yeomen, abashed and mortified, withdrew to their post, and Neville was beginning to remonstrate with his master upon the risk of passing over thus slightly their negligence upon their duty, and the propriety of an example in a case so peculiarly aggravated as the permitting one so suspicious as the marabout to approach within dagger's length of his person, when Richard interrupted him with, "Speak not of it, Neville. Wouldst thou have me avenge a petty risk to myself more severely than the loss of England's banner? It has been stolen.